When a new Resident Evil drops, it's a cultural event for horror fans, but Resident Evil Requiem on the Nintendo Switch 2 feels like something more. It feels like a hardware graduation of sorts. For the first time since 2005, a Resident Evil mainline game is launching on Nintendo hardware simultaneously with other consoles. Since then, we've had a few 3DS exclusives, but on the whole, Capcom just outright skipped Nintendo home consoles for the next 4 numbered entries in the franchise. It began to feel like a bit of a novelty to play them on Nintendo, finally getting them years later or dealing with janky cloud versions. And to be completely honest, I didn't think we would ever get a mainline entry on launch day again, unless it was a quirky exclusive, but those days are gone. We officially have one, and it's dense, claustrophobic, and aggressively detailed. This isn't just a port this time round. It's a statement. The Switch 2 is ready for the current gen. So, is this a legendary survival experience, or is it just another biohazard that you should avoid? Let's find out. Chronologically speaking, Requiem sits at the absolute furthest point in the timeline. Set around 2027, it serves as a direct bridge between the series' origins and its future, by bringing us back to the quarantined, post-thermobaric explosion Raccoon City. And to add to that nostalgia bait, they've given us our boy Leon back. 30 years older, and a cynical, battle-hardened relic of the old world, which narratively is fantastically juxtaposed by our other protagonist, Grace Ashcroft, a fumbling, out-of-her-depth rookie who represents just how terrifying this nightmare is for a regular person. With these two perspectives, the game offers a dual protagonist switching system, jumping between segments with Super Soldier Leon and Grace, who is arguably the most vulnerable protagonist we've ever controlled. She stumbles, her hands shake, and her panic is palpable through the screen. She serves as the perfect foil to Leon's veteran composure, making the horror feel grounded and dangerous all over again. And Capcom absolutely nailed this dynamic by allowing both first and third person perspectives for both characters. When you first load into the game, Leon is given that third person over the shoulder view that leans into that heavy action, giving off those strong Resi 4 vibes. While your initial experience with Grace will be locked into that claustrophobic first person view, forcing you to experience her fear and traumatic journey firsthand. And this duality between the leads is superb. You can go into the settings and check the dynamic perspective toggle to allow alternate views on both characters, but I highly recommend sticking to those original perspectives. Now, I don't want to get into any spoilers, but the general overlay of the plot is that Grace gets dispatched to investigate a series of strange deaths at the condemned Renwood Hotel, where her mother died 8 years prior. In the midst of her investigation, she is kidnapped, finding herself trapped in the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Centre. And Leon, in a bitter homecoming, is forced to navigate the yet again endangered city to stop history from repeating itself on a global scale. As for the gameplay, it's a return to the tactical desperation, and it just about manages to perfectly balance action and survival horror. And the Switch 2's haptics really increase this tension. Upon launching the game, you will have the choice of 4 difficulty settings: Casual, Standard Modern, Standard Classic, and Insanity. Modern is your typical balanced experience with generous autosaves, but Standard Classic is a total love letter to the PS1 era. It completely removes Grace's autosaves, bringing back ink ribbons, forcing you to scavenge for limited items just to save your progress at a typewriter. For those of you out there who want a pure tourist experience, Casual mode buffs your health and gives you heavy aim assist. But the real test is Insanity mode, unlocked after your first completion, which alters item placements and save codes to keep even veterans on their toes. However, where the game truly caught me off guard was in that duality and contrast of gameplay. While Grace is in a constant spiral of fear, vulnerability and exhaustion in what I regard as the best elements of survival horror, Leon is just a walking engine of destruction. This man is just messing shit up, straight up murdering the infected, execution style. His segments have this almost Dead Rising-esque level of gratuitous violence that at times left me yearning for days of old, where you had locked cameras and limited ammo, as opposed to chainsaws. It is far more balanced than previous titles, and the moments it zeroes in on Grace's traumatic journey, the game absolutely shines. But from a personal perspective, I could do with a bit less of the over-the-top action. But with that said, there are definitely times when Leon's combat is fluid and, dare I say it, pretty damn fun, even for a naysayer. The gore system has been dialed up to 11. He quite literally dismantles an infected horde limb by limb. And I will say, there is a visceral weight to his combat that at times provides a blood-soaked release after the hours of psychological tension you spend as Grace. You can see that Capcom has tried its best to balance these two perspectives, and that they're not quite sure in which direction to go. You'll have people like me pining for the good old days, but I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that want to see Leon with a magnum in one hand and a chainsaw in another. They've obviously pulled back from the full action of Resi 5 and 6, and in my opinion, this is a step in the right direction, but they definitely played it safe in keeping a fine balance between the two styles. Now, I touched on it earlier, but being able to switch between first and third person perspectives is a wonderful addition and can really change the feel of both stories. And yes, a developer that actually gets it, Capcom has implemented gyro for the Switch 2, and it's wonderful. I cannot tell you how many times I've been left disappointed by the lack of gyro in a game. There is no mouse support for the Switch 2 version, but in reality, it isn't really needed. There are a few minigames here and there when crafting or extracting samples where it could have been used. And while they are fine the first few times round, they do get a little tedious, and mouse support wouldn't really do anything to help or change the experience, so all in all, I'm happy with there being none. Now for the technical side, to start with, there is no quality or performance toggle here. Capcom have opted for a single, unified and uncapped profile that targets 60 frames per second. And in order to try and achieve that, the internal resolution is a surprisingly low 540p when docked and a mere 360 in handheld, and there is no sign of the ray tracing that's present in the other versions. On paper, that might sound like a disaster, but the DLSS puts in a shift, and the Switch 2's Nvidia AI upscaler goes nuclear here. And the final 1080p output looks remarkably sharp, except for maybe the hair. We still have that what I like to call Switch hair. It was one of my peeves with the Final Fantasy VII remake, but I'll admit, if that's my biggest issue, then it's probably a banging game. However, targeting 60 frames per second is the key word here. In tight hallways with little action, it's smooth and topping out at 60, but in the open streets and alleyways, the frame rate will hover in the high 40s, but there were definitely times when it bottomed out at 30 in the clutter and particle heavy scenes, and there are noticeable frame drops at these times. But thankfully, these aren't too common, and for the most part it does stick to the high 40s and low 50s. But that does beg the question of whether they're considered a locked 40 mode, or just that being the only option. Although as just mentioned, they may not have been able to, given the few occasions where it plummets to 30. I'm sure that after a while, developers will find that golden zone of performance and visuals. It does appear to be that locked 40, but right now it doesn't seem to be a priority for many devs. But given the console's 120Hz screen, it does feel like it will be a nice addition for handheld in the future. And there must surely come a time when developers start focusing on this. But all of this to say that due to the lack of variable refresh rate in docked, you are going to encounter some judder or apparent stuttering. But yeah, it's few and far between, and it really doesn't do too much to the overall experience. But just be wary of that fact when you see a lot of fire or particle effects, or you're in an overly cluttered scene. And moving to handheld, the internal resolution drops to that 360 baseline, which sounds absurd at first, but again, the DLSS works wonders and gives what I think is the best Switch 2 visuals we've seen to date. Those first few scenes when you are just walking through the city look breathtaking, and we truly are seeing what this console is capable of. You could pause the game and zoom in to analyse the smallest of textures in the distance, but this really isn't something you are going to see in real time, so it's pretty negligible to pick apart. But as an overall visual experience, besides the hair, it's a spectacle. Because the handheld screen supports the variable refresh rate, those dips into the 40s feel much smoother than they will on your TV. The only real downside is that LCD panel. The deep shadows suffer from some IPS glow, but all in all, it's the most impressive handheld horror experience ever made. I really don't want to have to fork out for another Switch 2 console, but man, I would love to see some of these games on an OLED model. In regards to the price, you can currently pick it up on the eShop for £64.99. That's €79.99, $69.99 US, and $94.99 in Canada. I'm not entirely sure what's happened with that euro price. I picked it up off of the French eShop, but that does seem a bit high. I'm not sure if that's the deluxe version or not, but it's all I could find. Now, this is obviously a premium price for what boils down to a 10 to 12 hour story mode. Yes, you do have the replayability in the insane difficulty, and with the DLC prepared in what I imagine will be a mercenary mode in a few weeks after launch. Now, in the grand scheme of things, this is just the modern price of a AAA game after years of price creep. Am I happy paying this? Not really. But is it changing? No. Fact of the matter is, it's the same price as all of the other versions on other consoles, and we've been screaming for years to have these big titles on launch, so it seems a little hypocritical to criticise the price, but it's definitely something worth thinking about if you're on the fence. You can lessen the pain a little by picking up the Generation Bundle, which includes Resident Evil 7 and 8, and it only costs an additional £20 or your country's equivalent, and that can allow you to justify it in a number of ways, whether that's getting 7 and 8 for £10 each, or cost dollar averaging it to the free games for £28 each. A bigger purchase up front, yeah, but it does sting a little less if you're going to enjoy all free games. Ultimately, we may not like it, but we can't really complain too much given what's on offer. There are also game keycard physical versions of both Requiem on its own and a Generation Pack with all three. And I'm not sure about other countries, but in the UK, it's actually a bit cheaper to pick those up on Amazon. I think Requiem is $58.99 and the bundle is £79.99, so definitely worth looking at. So where does that leave us? We are never going to escape the haters and the PS5 Andes. It's almost become the modern equivalent of the old PC versus console debate. It's tiring, but it's not ending anytime soon. I try my best to avoid it because it's futile. If you enjoy something, don't let others turn you away from it. But Resident Evil Requiem on Switch 2 is one of the strongest arguments yet that Nintendo's new hardware can handle proper third-party AAA titles without too much compromise. It is a triumph of optimization, and it feels like a defining moment for the Nintendo Switch 2. By leaning on Nvidia's DLSS technology, Capcom has delivered a version that doesn't just run, it actually holds its own, and is arguably the best-looking game on the system to date. Some of those early visuals walking through the city are absolutely stunning, especially in handheld. It really is something to behold. As for the overall experience, it's atmospheric and deliberate, and its pacing is a masterclass, balancing Grace's white-knuckle survival horror with Leon's sadistic action hero catharsis. Capcom has created an entry that honours 30 years of history, while just hinting at a bold new path forward in regards to the engine and the thematics. Whether you're navigating the ruins of Raccoon City or dismantling a horde with a hatchet, the game never fails to keep you on the edge of your seat, and it's top notch. It is by no means perfect, of course. After you've experienced them a few times, some of the minigames and tasks feel a bit like filler or padding, and Capcom still haven't quite nailed the perfect gameplay balance. They seem a bit unsure on whether to pursue the action or the tense survival horror gameplay. And while there was a nice mix of both, which worked well together, I would personally like to see it swing back towards the older style of survival horror. This entry definitely played it a little safe and aimed straight down the middle. And on top of that, while playing docked, you will inevitably experience a few frame drops. At times, that unlocked frame rate fluctuates quite heavily, and I know the price is going to divide opinion at its full-fat AAA rate, but this is what we've been asking for all this time. AAA titles on launch. All in all, none of those issues outweigh what this game achieves overall, not only as a new mainline entry in the Resident Evil franchise, but as a Nintendo Switch 2 version. If you showed this to people 12 months ago, they would have been biting Capcom's hands off, no pun intended. So a lot of the time, it's about context more than anything. Compare this to what we ever got on the Switch 1. Times have changed, and now you can see a world where most titles have the potential to be released on Nintendo hardware. To date, this playthrough was one of the most unique and immersive experiences I've had on the Switch 2 since it's launched, whether handheld or docked. It's at times mesmerizing, and I wholeheartedly recommend it. And that just about wraps it up. This game really feels like the start of a new era for Nintendo fans, and I'm genuinely excited to see where Capcom and the Resident Evil engine go from here. They seem to be the flag bearers at the minute, but we will see what the future brings from Monolith, From Software, Square Enix, and maybe even CD Projekt Red. I am cautiously optimistic, but I just hope there's still room for improvement and developers can keep squeezing out better and better experiences. But if this is the peak of the Switch 2, it's not a bad place to be, is it? Let me know in the comments if you picked it up or if you plan to, and what you are looking forward to the most. And if you're planning on waiting for a sale or just passing on this altogether, let me know why. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe, it helps the channel out massively. But with that said, thanks for spending time with me today, stay cozy, and yeah, I'll see you around.
I should have it fixed soon. I just need to find my...